Poor girl texted the CEO by mistake. He sent a helicopter when he heard about the twins. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Emma Collins sat on the edge of her worn-out couch, her hands trembling as she stared at the cracked screen of her old phone. The twins were finally asleep in their crib, their tiny chests rising and falling in rhythm with the hum of the old heater. Her electricity bill was overdue, her pantry was nearly empty, and the last can of formula had barely filled their bottles that evening. She opened her banking app and stared at the number glowing on the screen, $1.73. Her throat tightened. Her brother James had helped last week, but she could not bring herself to ask again. Still, she typed the message with shaking fingers. James, I hate to ask again, but I need $40 for the twins' formula. I will pay you back Friday. She pressed send before courage could fade. The phone clicked softly, message sent, and she dropped it onto her lap with a sigh that came from exhaustion more than shame. 3 miles away, in the glass tower of Meridian Technologies, Alexander Reed looked up from his laptop as his personal phone buzzed. He expected a message from his legal team. Instead, the screen showed an unfamiliar number and a message that made him pause. James, I hate to ask again, but I need $40 for the twins' formula. Alexander frowned, his thumb hovering over the delete button. Wrong number, obviously, but something in those words, desperation without self-pity, hit him harder than expected. He typed a quick reply, I think you have the wrong number. Moments later, another message appeared. Oh my God, I am so sorry. Please ignore that. I typed the last digit wrong. He could have stopped there. He should have. Yet before he could explain it to himself, his fingers moved again. Is your baby going to be all right? Across town, Emma froze, staring at the message. Who was this man? Why did he care? We will manage, she wrote quickly. Sorry to bother you. She put the phone face down, ashamed of her mistake. But the phone buzzed again. I could help, the stranger wrote. No strings attached. Emma's heart raced. She had heard stories about scams and traps, yet there was something simple and calm about his tone. Thank you, but I do not take money from strangers, she typed. A few seconds passed before his reply appeared. Smart policy, it read, but maybe I will not be a stranger anymore. My name is Alex. What formula do your babies need? She hesitated, staring at the blinking cursor, the dim light from the old lamp catching the tears she had tried so hard to hold back. A stranger on the other side of the city had read her mistake, and instead of laughing or blocking her, he had chosen kindness. That was how everything began, with a single wrong number and a message that was never meant to be sent. Emma stared at the message glowing on her screen. What formula do your babies need? Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. The word babies caught her off guard. She had not told him there were 2. Her pulse quickened. How did he know? She bit her lip and reread the earlier texts. She had said twins in the first message. Of course, her exhaustion was making her paranoid. She typed slowly. It is called gentle care. It is the only one that does not upset their stomach. Then she set the phone aside, convincing herself that would be the end of it. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the heater and the soft breathing of her sons. She had named them Liam and Noah, 2 tiny souls who shared her heartbeat and her struggle. The minutes stretched. Then her phone buzzed again. What is your Venmo? The stranger asked. You do not have to do this, she replied. I insist. Please, came the answer. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She felt foolish for even considering it, but the refrigerator was almost empty, and the twins' next feeding would be in 2 hours. She exhaled and typed her username. A moment later, the phone chimed. You have received $400. Emma gasped aloud. She stared at the number on the screen as if it might vanish. This is too much, she typed quickly. I cannot accept this. His reply came fast. Consider it an advance for the next few months. Buy what you need. No repayment. Just promise you will take care of them. Tears blurred her vision. She pressed a trembling hand over her mouth, trying not to wake the babies. Kindness was something she had almost forgotten how to recognize. She typed back one simple sentence. Thank you, You have no idea what this means. You are welcome, Emma, he wrote. Take care of Liam and Noah. Her eyes widened. She had never mentioned their names. She checked the thread again. She had not written them. Her chest tightened. How did he know? She hesitated, her fingers frozen over the keys. Before she could ask, another message appeared. Do not worry. I know your brother, James Connors. He works in my HR department. I recognized your number when you mentioned him. He talks about his sister often. Relief washed through her like a tide. That explained everything. Her brother must have mentioned her and the twins. She smiled faintly, feeling foolish for her panic. Then I guess you really are not a stranger anymore, she replied. Not anymore, he wrote. In his office, Alexander leaned back in his chair, staring at the city lights through the glass wall. Something about this woman's resilience touched a part of him he thought had died long ago. For years he had buried himself in work after losing his wife and child in an accident that no amount of money could undo. Since then, his world had been contracts and numbers, nothing human left to hold on to. But this woman, with her polite words and quiet strength, reminded him of something pure. He opened his laptop, typed her name into the internal employee database, and found her listed as relative of staff, unemployed, no criminal record, no requests for aid, just a single mother trying to survive. He felt a strange urge to help, not from guilt but from recognition. He sent one more text. Emma, if you are looking for work, I might have something. Temporary accounting project. Interested? Back in her apartment, Emma blinked in disbelief. Accounting project? She whispered. Her degree in accounting had once been her pride before layoffs and hospital bills had crushed her chances. She hesitated. I am interested, she finally replied. I will have my assistant contact you tomorrow, came his answer. Get some rest tonight. The twins will need you strong. Emma smiled through fresh tears. She looked over at Liam and Noah, sleeping soundly. Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of sirens and city traffic. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope. Somewhere above the skyline, a man she had never met was thinking about her message, a mistake that had become something else entirely. Neither of them knew it yet, but that single wrong text had just changed both of their lives forever. The morning sun slipped through the thin curtains of Emma's apartment, painting pale stripes across the floor. The smell of instant coffee mixed with the faint powder scent of baby formula as she balanced a bottle in one hand and her phone in the other. Liam and Noah were wide awake, cooing softly in their crib. Her heart still carried the disbelief of last night. The stranger who called himself Alex had wired $400 and offered her a job within a single conversation. It sounded impossible, yet the money had arrived, and the message was still there in her inbox. As she rocked one of the babies, her phone buzzed again. A new message appeared. Good morning, Emma. This is Clara, Mr. Reed's assistant. He asked me to schedule a brief interview today if you are available. Emma blinked, surprised by the speed. Yes, of course, she typed, trying to keep her composure while holding a squirming Noah. Can I bring my babies? There was a pause. Then Clara replied, Mr. Reed says you can. The office has a nursery area in case you need it. Emma's eyes filled with tears she quickly wiped away. No one had ever made such a thoughtful offer before. A few hours later, she stood outside Meridian Technologies, holding a diaper bag in one hand and pushing a stroller with the other. The glass building rose above her like something from another world. She felt small, out of place, wearing her cleanest blouse and patched jeans, but her determination was stronger than her fear. Inside the lobby, every surface gleamed. Polished marble floors reflected soft light from chandeliers that looked like frozen rain. A receptionist greeted her warmly. You must be Miss Collins. Mr. Reed is expecting you. Emma followed the woman through security gates and up an elevator that hummed like a heartbeat. Her reflection in the mirrored walls looked calm, but her hands trembled. When the doors opened, she stepped into a floor lined with glass offices and quiet efficiency. A tall man with silvering hair and calm blue eyes stood by the window. He turned when she entered, and for a heartbeat, she froze. Alexander Reed looked exactly like his voice had sounded steady, kind, but distant, as if he carried the weight of an invisible grief. Miss Collins, he said gently. Please come in. She pushed the stroller forward, and both babies blinked up at him. For the first time in years, something like a smile softened his face. So these are the famous twins, he said quietly. They are beautiful. Emma felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you, Mr. Reed, and thank you for what you did last night. I do not know how to repay you." He shook his head. "You do not owe me anything. Let us just say your message found me at the right time." She sensed there was more behind his words, but did not ask. He gestured for her to sit. "Tell me about your background." She explained briefly her accounting degree, her last job before layoffs, her brother moving out of state. She kept her tone professional, though her voice trembled when she mentioned struggling to find work with 2 infants. Alexander listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he said, "You were honest, which is more than I can say for most people I meet in this office. We need help reconciling some expense reports for a charity division. It is temporary, remote work, flexible hours. Will that help?" Emma could not speak for a moment. She nodded, her throat tight. "Yes, sir. It would help more than you can imagine." He smiled faintly. "Good. My assistant will send the details this afternoon." As she stood to leave, Liam began to fuss. Before she could reach for him, Alexander stepped closer, his movements surprisingly natural, and gently adjusted the blanket around the baby. "You have your hands full," he said softly, "but you are doing fine." His voice carried something fragile, something he had not let anyone hear in years. Emma looked up at him and saw not the powerful CEO the world knew, but a man quietly remembering how to care. When she thanked him again, he simply nodded, his gaze lingering on the twins as she left the office. Alone once more, Alexander turned toward the window overlooking the city. The morning sunlight caught his reflection, and for the first time in a long while, he saw hope staring back. Emma spent the next week working from her small kitchen table, her laptop balanced between bottles, burp cloths, and a stack of invoices that Alexander's assistant had sent her. The accounting project was more complex than she had expected, yet she found herself enjoying it. It felt good to use her skills again, to feel capable instead of desperate. Every evening, after putting the twins to sleep, she reviewed numbers until her eyes ached. When she sent her first report, Alexander replied with a short message. "Excellent work. You caught errors even our internal team missed." That one sentence made her heart lift. It was not just praise, it was respect. The days settled into a fragile rhythm. Emma worked, cared for the twins, and checked her phone every few hours, half expecting another message from him. Sometimes he did text, asking simple questions. "How are Liam and Noah?" Or, "Are you getting enough rest?" His tone was never intrusive, always kind. She began to see him as more than a distant CEO. He was someone who genuinely cared. One afternoon, as she was finishing a spreadsheet, her phone buzzed again. "Emma, do you have a moment for a quick call?" She hesitated before answering. His voice came through, calm and deep. "I wanted to thank you personally. Your accuracy saved us thousands in penalties." She smiled nervously. "I am glad I could help." There was a brief silence. Then he said, "I was wondering if you would like to visit the office again this week. We are hosting a small staff event, and it might be a good chance to meet the team." Her instinct was to decline. She could not afford new clothes or childcare, but he seemed to read her hesitation. "You can bring the twins," he added. "We have a daycare room now, thanks to your suggestion about supporting working parents. It was a good idea." Emma's heart fluttered. He had listened. "I will be there," she said softly. 2 days later, she arrived at Meridian Tower again, this time wearing a simple blue dress she had borrowed from her neighbor. The lobby buzzed with conversation, and her nerves twisted. Clara greeted her warmly. "Right this way, Miss Collins." When they entered the event room, Emma froze for a moment. The space was elegant but welcoming, filled with employees chatting over coffee and pastries. Alexander stood near the back, speaking with 2 managers. He noticed her immediately and smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. "Emma, you made it," he said as she approached. His presence was calm but commanding, dressed in a charcoal suit that contrasted sharply with her modest attire. "You look nice," he added, his tone genuine. She blushed. "Thank you, Mr. Reed." The twins stirred in their stroller, drawing curious glances from nearby staff. One young woman leaned down and cooed at them. "They are adorable," she said, smiling. Emma thanked her, relieved by the kindness. Alexander introduced her to a few key employees, describing her as the contractor who saved our quarter. Each compliment felt surreal. No one had ever spoken about her with pride before. As the event continued, a light rain began tapping against the tall windows. Alexander and Emma found themselves standing by the glass, watching the city blur under the grey sky. "You seem more at ease today," he said. "I am trying," she admitted. "It feels strange being around so many people again." "You belong here," he said quietly. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Before she could reply, thunder rolled in the distance, and the lights flickered. A storm was moving across the city faster than anyone expected. An assistant rushed over. "Sir, local flooding is being reported near the lower districts." Alexander's expression tightened. "That area includes your neighborhood, does it not?" he asked Emma. Her stomach dropped. "Yes, it does." He turned immediately to Clara. "Call the pilot. Prepare the helicopter." Emma stared at him, confused. "A helicopter? If the streets flood, you will not make it home safely." "I will take you there myself," he said firmly. For a moment she was speechless. The man she had texted by accident was now preparing to fly her home through a storm. As she looked at him, she realized that this was no longer about charity or coincidence. Something deeper was unfolding, something neither of them had expected when that wrong number changed their lives. Rain hammered against the tall windows of Meridian Tower as the storm intensified. Employees began gathering their belongings, murmuring about flooded streets and delayed trains. Emma's hands tightened around the stroller handles. She could already imagine the narrow road near her building turning into a river. Alexander's voice cut through the rising noise. "The helicopter will be ready in 10 minutes. We will leave as soon as it clears for takeoff." Emma shook her head. "You cannot do that, Mr. Reed. The storm is too dangerous." He looked at her steadily. "It is more dangerous for you to try driving home with 2 infants. I will not let that happen." The firmness in his tone left no room for argument. Clara approached, holding a tablet. "Sir, the pilot confirms visibility is dropping fast. We have a short window." Alexander nodded, then turned back to Emma. "Go to the rooftop lounge. I will meet you there." She wanted to protest again, but something in his calm expression made her trust him. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened to the rooftop, where the wind howled and rain streaked sideways like silver needles. The helicopter's blades spun slowly, waiting. A crew member helped her inside, securing the twins' carrier seats beside her. Alexander climbed in last, soaked but composed, his hair darkened by the rain. When the doors shut and the engines roared to life, Emma held her breath. The city fell away beneath them, glittering faintly through the sheets of rain. From the cockpit, the pilot's voice came through the headset. "Strong crosswind, sir. Hold tight." Alexander leaned slightly forward, his tone even. "Just get us to the district and circle until I say." He glanced at Emma. "You are safe now." She clutched the straps of the baby carrier, whispering, "I cannot believe you are doing this." He smiled faintly. "Let us call it good timing, or maybe fate." The flight lasted only 15 minutes, but to Emma it felt endless. Below them, floodwaters reflected flashes of lightning, swallowing the streets she knew. When they finally hovered above her neighborhood, her chest constricted. The lower floors of her building were already submerged. "That is my home," she said softly. "I do not know what to do." Alexander placed a hand on her shoulder, steady but gentle. "You will stay at a hotel tonight. My driver will meet us once we land. We will take care of everything in the morning." She turned to him, eyes wide. "Mr. Reed, I cannot accept more help. You have done enough." "Emma," he said quietly, "you do not have to prove your strength every minute. Let someone else carry the weight for once." The sincerity in his words left her silent. The helicopter began its descent toward a nearby hospital rooftop, where emergency teams were gathering evacuees. When the door opened, a rush of wet air filled the cabin. Alexander stepped out first, then extended his hand to her. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. His grip was warm, steadying her against the gusts. The twins stirred but did not cry, as if sensing her calm. Once inside the hospital, nurses guided them to a waiting area filled with displaced families. Alexander spoke quietly to the staff, arranging temporary lodging. Emma watched him, struck by the contrast between the powerful executive she had met in the office and the man who now stood in soaked clothes, talking gently to frightened children. When he returned, he said, "They have a room ready for you downstairs. There will be food and blankets." "You should go," she told him softly. "Your company needs you." "It will still be there tomorrow," he replied. "Right now, this matters more." For a moment, they simply looked at each other as thunder rolled above the roof. Something unspoken hung between them, a quiet understanding that what had begun as an accident was becoming something neither of them could dismiss. As Alexander turned to leave, he paused. "Emma," he said, "I will check in tomorrow. If you need anything, call me. No hesitations." She nodded, her voice barely audible. "Thank you." When he walked away, she held the twins close and whispered to them, "We are going to be all right." Outside, the storm still raged, but for the first time, the sound no longer scared her. Somewhere above the city, the man who had sent a helicopter for her was watching the same storm, knowing that against all odds, a single wrong number had led him exactly where he needed to be. The next morning, the rain had softened to a grey drizzle that misted across the hospital windows. Emma sat in the small cot room that the nurses had given her, holding a cup of lukewarm coffee and watching the twins sleep peacefully in their crib. The events of the night before felt unreal. The helicopter, the flood, Alexander Reed sitting beside her in the storm, it all replayed in her mind like a dream she was afraid to wake from. Her phone buzzed on the table. A new message appeared. "How are the boys this morning?" It was from Alexander. She smiled softly and typed back, "They are good. Still asleep. Thank you for last night." His reply came quickly. "You do not need to thank me. I am just glad you are safe. I sent someone to check your apartment. The building is flooded up to the second floor. You cannot go back for now." Emma's chest tightened. "So everything is gone." "We will know once it dries out," he answered. "Do not worry about where to stay. I am sending a driver to take you and the twins to a hotel until repairs begin. It is already arranged." She stared at the screen, overwhelmed. "You do not have to do this," she wrote. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." By noon, a black sedan arrived at the hospital entrance. The driver introduced himself as Daniel and helped her load the twins' carrier seats. The hotel Alexander had chosen overlooked the river. The suite was larger than her entire apartment, with soft cream walls and clean white sheets that smelled of lavender. It was far beyond anything she could afford. Yet when she tried to protest, Daniel simply said, "Mr. Reed insists. He will contact you this evening." That night, as the twins slept, the phone rang. "Emma?" Alexander's voice was warm but measured. "How are you settling in?" "The room is beautiful," she said quietly. "It is too much. You and your children deserve safety, not luxury," he said. "But if comfort helps, then let it." There was a pause, filled with the quiet hum of the city behind him. "I hope you do not mind that I had the company set up a temporary workspace at the hotel. Clara will deliver the equipment tomorrow. You can keep working without worrying about the flood." Emma could barely speak. "I do not know how to thank you." "You already have," he replied. "Your work reminded me what honesty looks like." She felt a lump rise in her throat. "You make it sound like I did something extraordinary." "You did," he said simply. "You reminded me that integrity still matters." When the call ended, Emma sat in silence, feeling something she had not felt in a long time seen. The next few days passed quietly. Each morning, she worked on company reports while the twins played beside her on the carpet. Every evening, she received a brief message from Alexander asking about their day. He never asked for anything in return, never crossed the invisible line of professionalism, yet his presence in her life had become constant, steady as the sunrise. One afternoon, there was a knock at her door. When she opened it, she found Clara holding a small package. "Mr. Reed asked me to deliver this personally," the assistant said with a kind smile. Inside was a new laptop and a handwritten note. "For Emma Collins, thank you for reminding me that doing good quietly is still worth doing." She traced the letters with her fingertips, tears forming. That evening, she texted him, "I got your note. You should not have." His reply came within a minute. "It is nothing compared to what you have done for me." She frowned, confused. "What have I done?" The answer appeared, "You reminded me how to care." Emma stared at the words for a long time, her heart beating faster. She looked down at her sleeping sons and whispered, "Maybe this wrong number was not wrong after all." Outside, the storm clouds began to clear, and through the hotel window, the first rays of sunlight broke over the city skyline. 2 weeks passed, and the city slowly recovered from the storm. Emma's apartment building remained closed for repairs, so she continued staying at the hotel that Alexander had arranged. Each day followed a calm rhythm. She worked remotely, sent reports, played with the twins, and answered Alexander's occasional check-ins. Yet beneath the quiet routine, something new began to grow, a feeling she could not name, soft and unfamiliar. One morning, while she was feeding Noah, her phone rang. The caller ID showed his name. She hesitated before answering. "Good morning, Mr. Reed." His voice came warm and easy. "I thought we agreed you would call me Alex by now." She smiled despite herself. "Old habits die hard," he chuckled. "Fair enough. Listen, I am organizing a small charity event this weekend for flood relief. It is casual, just some donors and staff. I would like you to attend." "Me?" she said in disbelief. "Yes, you. You have been working harder than anyone. You deserve to see the results of your efforts." Emma hesitated. "I do not have anything to wear to an event like that." "Then let me handle that," he said. "Clara will deliver something suitable. No arguments." Before she could protest, he had already ended the call. That afternoon, Clara arrived with a soft grey dress and a matching shawl. "Mr. Reed said to tell you it is just a simple evening," she said with a knowing smile. "He will pick you up at 6. Emma stared at the outfit after Clara left, her heart racing. She told herself it was only gratitude, not nerves. At 6 sharp, a black car pulled up outside the hotel. When she stepped into the lobby, Alexander was waiting, dressed in a navy suit without a tie, his hair slightly tousled. "You look beautiful," he said sincerely. She blushed. "You are too kind." The event was held at a riverside hall, decorated with soft lights and photos of the city's recovery efforts. Emma was introduced to donors and volunteers, each thanking her for her work behind the scenes. She could hardly believe it when one woman said, "Your reports helped us secure funding for the new daycare center." Emma glanced at Alexander, who only smiled and nodded as if proud of her. Later that evening, when the crowd thinned, they stood together near the balcony overlooking the water. The city lights shimmered on the river like scattered stars. "You never told me why you got into accounting," he said. She laughed quietly. "Because I like fixing things. Numbers make sense. They do not lie." "And people?" he asked. "People are harder," she admitted. "But sometimes they surprise you." Their eyes met for a long moment, and she felt her heart skip. Before she could speak, his phone vibrated. He glanced at it, his expression shifting slightly. "I am sorry," he said, stepping away to answer. She watched him move to the corner of the terrace, his face half lit by the golden light. His tone was calm, but firm. "I told you not to call me during work hours. No, this is not the right time." When he returned, he looked thoughtful. "Everything all right?" she asked gently. "Just business," he said. "Old responsibilities that refused to stay buried." She sensed he was hiding something but did not push. Instead, she smiled. "You seem like a man who carries a lot." "We all carry something," he replied softly. "Yours just happens to be more visible and far braver." Emma looked down, embarrassed. "I am not brave. I am just doing what I have to." "That," he said quietly, "is exactly what courage looks like." The air between them grew still, filled with something that neither could define. The sound of laughter drifted from the hall behind them. But in that moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. As they left the event later that night, rain began to fall again, soft, gentle, harmless. Alexander opened the car door for her, his voice low. "Some storms do not destroy. Some just remind us we are still alive." She smiled, not realizing how deeply his words would echo in her heart long after that night. The following week, the city air felt lighter, washed clean after days of gentle rain. Emma returned to her hotel room late one afternoon, still thinking about the charity event. The way Alexander had looked at her by the balcony, the calm warmth in his eyes, lingered in her mind like a melody she could not forget. She tried to remind herself that he was her employer, a man from a different world, but every message he sent chipped away at the distance between them. That evening, while she was preparing bottles for the twins, her phone rang. "Emma," his voice said through the speaker, steady but softer than usual. "Are you free tomorrow?" "Yes," she answered, curious. "Why?" "I want to show you something. It is work. Related, I promise." The next day, a company car picked her up and drove through the outskirts of the city to a construction site, surrounded by open fields. When they arrived, Alexander was waiting by a temporary office building, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. "Welcome to Meridian Hope," he said. "This is what your accounting work helped fund." She followed him inside, her curiosity growing. Large blueprints lined the walls, labeled as a future community center. "It will include daycare rooms, a small clinic, and affordable housing units, he explained. After the storm, we realized how many families lost everything. Your reports helped secure the final approvals. Emma stared at the plans, speechless. This is incredible, she whispered. I only worked on spreadsheets. Those spreadsheets made this possible, he said. Numbers are not cold when they change lives. His sincerity made her heart tighten. They stepped outside again, the wind carrying the scent of wet soil and new beginnings. Workers waved as Alexander passed, their respect for him clear. You come here often? She asked. When I can, he replied. This place reminds me that not everything valuable is on a balance sheet. She nodded slowly. You sound like someone who has seen both sides of life. Maybe I have, he said, his gaze distant. My wife and I started this foundation years ago. After the accident, I stopped visiting. It hurt too much. But seeing you fight for your children, watching you rebuild piece by piece, it reminded me why we began. Emma's breath caught. She had heard whispers from employees about his past, but hearing it from him felt different. I am sorry, she said softly. You do not have to be, he answered. Grief can bury you or teach you. I am still learning which it did to me. A quiet moment passed, filled only by the rustling wind. Then he smiled faintly. Come on, there is something else I want to show you. He led her toward a nearby warehouse where boxes were stacked floor to ceiling. These are relief supplies for families still displaced, he explained. We are short on volunteers for the weekend. Would you like to help organize them? Of course, she said immediately. You do not even have to ask. They spent the next few hours sorting supplies, blankets, baby formula, canned food. Emma worked with quick precision, her hair falling loose as she moved between stacks. At one point, Alexander handed her a bottle of water, their fingers brushing. The contact was brief, but it sent a small shock through her. He noticed too, his voice quiet when he said, You have a talent for turning chaos into order. It is called being a mom, she replied with a small laugh. You learn fast when 2 babies depend on you. He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, They are lucky to have you. When the sun began to set, the sky turned amber, bathing the half-built structures in golden light. Alexander walked her back to the car. You should see this place when it is finished, he said. I will, she promised. Maybe the twins will play here one day. He smiled, and for the first time, there was something almost vulnerable in it. Then I will make sure it is ready for them. As the car drove away, Emma watched him grow smaller in the distance, his figure outlined against the fading light. For the first time since the wrong message that had started it all, she realized this was no longer about coincidence. It was about 2 lives quietly beginning to intertwine. The next few days brought a calm rhythm that Emma had not felt in years. She returned to her work each morning with quiet focus, sending reports while the twins played nearby. Yet her mind often wandered back to the construction site, to the look in Alexander's eyes when he spoke about his late wife, and the way he had smiled when she promised to bring the twins there someday. Something about that place had changed him. She could tell. It had changed her too. On Friday morning, Clara called to say the apartment repairs were nearly done. You should be able to move back early next week, she said cheerfully. Emma felt relief and hesitation at the same time. The hotel had become a small haven, a bridge between her old life and the strange new world Alexander had opened to her. When she texted him the update, his reply was simple. That is good news. But until then, promise me you will rest. You have done more than enough. That evening, as the twins slept, Emma found herself replaying his words, her heart heavy with something that felt too much like longing. The next day, she decided to bring coffee to the relief site to surprise the volunteers. When she arrived, the workers greeted her warmly, and to her quiet delight, Alexander was there too. He wore a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled, his expression softened by the sunlight. You came back, he said, smiling. I told you I would, she replied. They spent the morning working side by side, sorting supplies and laughing over small mistakes. For a while, the world outside those walls did not exist. Then, as noon approached, a black luxury car pulled up near the entrance. A woman stepped out tall, poised, dressed in designer heels that looked out of place on the dusty ground. Her expression was sharp, searching. Emma froze as she walked straight toward Alexander. There you are, the woman said smoothly. You have been impossible to reach. Alexander's demeanor changed subtly. Madeline, he said evenly, this is not a good time. It never is it? She replied, crossing her arms. The board is worried. You have skipped 2 meetings this week, and now I find you playing construction manager." Her tone carried quiet contempt. Emma instinctively took a step back, not wanting to intrude, but Alexander noticed and said, "Emma, this is Madeline Shaw, the company's vice president." Madeline turned her gaze to Emma, her smile polite but cold. "So this is the new accountant everyone keeps talking about. I see why you have been distracted." The implication made Emma's cheeks flush. "It is not like that," she began softly, but Alexander's voice cut through. "Enough, Madeline." His tone was calm but unmistakably firm. "Emma's work has been invaluable. She deserves respect." The woman's eyes flickered, surprise briefly replacing her confidence. "Of course," she said, recovering. "Do not let me interrupt your humanitarian efforts." She turned and left, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. When she was gone, the silence between them felt heavier. Emma spoke first. "I did not mean to cause trouble." Alexander shook his head. "You did nothing wrong. Madeline is protective of the company, and sometimes of me. It makes her forget her manners." "Protective of you?" she asked carefully. He sighed. "She has worked with me for over a decade. Some people mistake loyalty for something else." Emma nodded slowly. "I understand. Still, I do not want anyone to think—" "Let them think what they want," he interrupted gently. "I know the truth, and so do you." His words lingered between them, more intimate than he intended. The afternoon light slanted across his face, softening the lines of exhaustion. For a moment, Emma wanted to say something, anything, but instead she smiled faintly. "You should go to your meetings," she said. "You have a company to run." "And you have 2 sons waiting," he replied, a hint of warmth in his eyes. "I will drive you back." As they walked to his car, she could feel the quiet hum of something unspoken, a connection that neither of them had chosen but could no longer deny. Somewhere deep down, Emma knew that whatever had begun with a wrong number was no longer a coincidence. It was becoming destiny, one message at a time. That evening, as the city lights flickered across the windshield, Emma sat quietly in the passenger seat while Alexander drove. The twins were asleep in their carriers, the steady rhythm of the tires on the road filling the silence. She wanted to ask him about Madeline, about what the woman had said, but something in his expression told her to wait. Finally, he spoke first. "You should not worry about what happened today," he said softly. "Madeline forgets that the world does not revolve around quarterly meetings." Emma looked at him, his jawline outlined by the glow of the dashboard lights. "She seemed upset," she said carefully. "Upset that you care about something other than work." He smiled faintly. "Maybe she is not used to seeing me outside the boardroom. Maybe I am not used to it either." They drove the rest of the way in companionable silence until the car pulled up in front of the hotel. As she unbuckled her seatbelt, he said quietly, "Emma, when your apartment is ready next week, I want you to consider another option." She turned to him, surprised. "Another option?" "Yes," he said. "I own several properties near the company campus. One of them is furnished and vacant. You could stay there until you find something permanent. It would be safer, closer to work, and easier for the twins." "Alexander, I cannot keep accepting favors," she protested gently. "You have already done more than enough." His tone softened. "You are not accepting charity. You are accepting stability. And if it helps, think of it as a company arrangement." She wanted to refuse, but the thought of moving back to a water-damaged building made her hesitate. "I will think about it," she said finally. He nodded, understanding. "That is all I ask." Over the next few days, they exchanged brief messages but did not see each other. Emma found herself missing their conversations more than she wanted to admit. On Thursday afternoon, Clara visited the hotel with final paperwork for her project extension. "Mr. Reed wanted you to know the board approved additional funding," she said with a smile. "You are officially part of the foundation team now." Emma blinked in surprise. "That cannot be right. I was just a contractor." "Not anymore," Clara said. "Your dedication impressed the entire board, even Madeline, surprisingly. Congratulations." When Clara left, Emma sat staring at the documents, her name printed neatly beside her new title, Financial Coordinator, Meridian Hope Foundation. Her hands trembled slightly as she texted Alexander, "I just got the news. Thank you for believing in me." His reply came almost instantly. "You earned it," I only reminded them to notice. That night, as she looked out over the city, she realized how much her life had changed in only a few weeks. From a desperate mother with $1.73 in her account to a woman building something lasting, it all began with a wrong text. The next morning, she finally visited her repaired apartment. The hallway still smelled faintly of damp paint, and her small living room was exactly as she had left it, except emptier. The space no longer felt like home. She picked up a photo frame from the table, a picture of her and the twins, taken before everything fell apart, and felt an ache in her chest. Her phone buzzed. "How does it feel to be home?" Alexander's message read. She typed back, "It feels smaller than I remember." A moment later, his reply came. "That is because you have outgrown it. You are building something bigger now." She smiled softly at the screen. "Does that offer for the house still stand?" "Always," he wrote. "I will send you the address." As she held her sons close, Emma realized she was no longer afraid of what came next. The storm that had once nearly drowned her life had instead washed something new ashore, a chance to start again, guided by the kindness of a man who had every reason not to care but chose to anyway. And somewhere in the quiet between messages, she began to wonder if fate was still writing their story. The following weekend, Emma stood outside the two-story house Alexander had mentioned, her heart beating fast as she looked up at the soft grey exterior. The home sat on a quiet tree-lined street near the company campus, with a small yard and a porch swing that creaked gently in the breeze. It was far more than she had imagined, peaceful, safe, and filled with light that poured through wide windows. Alexander's message had said simply, "The key is under the mat. Make it yours." She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of pine and new paint. Every detail felt carefully chosen: simple furniture, warm lighting, and a nursery already set up with 2 small cribs and a box of toys. On the kitchen counter sat a handwritten note. "Welcome home, Emma. The world can be cruel, but sometimes it gives back. You deserve this peace." For a moment, she could not move. Her throat tightened as she imagined him standing here earlier that day, making sure everything was ready. She pressed the note to her chest and whispered, "Thank you." Over the next few days, she began to settle in. The twins loved the new space, giggling as they crawled across the living room rug. Each night, after putting them to sleep, she worked on the foundation's financial reports from her small office near the window. It was the kind of life she had once dreamed of but never thought she would have again. One evening, just as she was finishing her work, a soft knock came at the door. When she opened it, Alexander stood there, holding a paper bag and looking slightly unsure for the first time since she had met him. "I brought dinner," he said. "I did not want to assume, but I figured you might not have had time to cook." Emma smiled, stepping aside. "Come in." He placed the bag on the counter and began unpacking containers of pasta and salad. "It is nothing fancy," he said, "but it beats instant noodles." She laughed. "You would be surprised how many nights those have saved me." They ate together at the small kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound for a while. Then he looked around, his eyes softening at the sight of toys scattered across the floor. "They are happy here," he said. "You made this a home." "You did that," she replied quietly. "You gave us the chance." He shook his head. "You gave yourself the chance. I just opened the door." When the twins began to fuss in the next room, Emma excused herself to check on them. Alexander followed to the doorway, watching as she gently soothed them back to sleep. The tenderness in her movements struck him in a way he had not expected. For a moment, he saw his younger self before loss had hardened him standing beside his wife, dreaming of a family that would never be. When Emma turned, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Neither said a word. Later, as he prepared to leave, she walked him to the door. "Thank you for everything," she said. "You have no idea what this means to us." "I think I do," he answered softly. "You reminded me what it feels like to care again." She hesitated, wanting to tell him that he had done the same for her, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she smiled and said, "Good night, Alex." As he stepped into the cool evening air, he looked back once, catching the warm glow from the windows. Inside, Emma stood holding one of the twins, the faint light framing her silhouette. In that quiet moment, he realized the truth he had been avoiding somehow, without meaning to. This woman and her 2 children had become the most important part of his life. And though neither of them said it out loud, both knew that something extraordinary had begun. Days turned into weeks, and the new rhythm of Emma's life began to feel natural. She woke each morning to the laughter of the twins, brewed her coffee while sunlight streamed across the kitchen floor, and worked on the foundation's finances until early afternoon. Alexander visited occasionally, always under the guise of business, but their meetings had grown warmer, longer, filled with quiet moments that lingered long after he left. On one of those afternoons, he arrived with files in one hand and a small stuffed bear in the other. "For Noah," he said with a faint smile. "Liam already has the blue one." Emma laughed softly, taking the bear. "You are keeping track?" "Of course," he said. "I have learned that fairness matters when you have twins." His easy tone made her smile, but there was something different about him that day. His usual calm seemed shadowed by worry. She noticed it as he glanced at his phone more than once during their meeting. Finally, she asked, "Is everything all right?" He hesitated, then sighed. "There is a board review next week. Some members think I am spending too much time on the foundation and not enough on corporate growth." She frowned. "They do not see what you are building. Meridian Hope is changing lives. Not everyone values that," he said quietly. "To them, compassion is just bad math." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then prove them wrong. Show them that compassion builds stronger numbers." He smiled faintly, his eyes softening. "You make it sound so simple." "Maybe it is," she said. "Sometimes the truth is." The conversation drifted into lighter topics, but the worry never fully left his face. When he left that evening, Emma stood at the doorway watching him go, the feeling of distance heavier than usual. The next few days passed in quiet routine until one morning she received a call from Clara. "Emma, have you seen the news?" Clara's voice was tense. "Someone leaked an article about the foundation, questioning its budget allocations. They are suggesting favoritism." Emma's stomach dropped. "Favoritism? They are claiming that Mr. Reed hired you because of a personal connection. They are implying things that are not true." The world seemed to spin for a moment. "That is absurd," she whispered. "Everything I have done is documented and transparent." "I know," Clara said. "But perception can be cruel. Mr. Reed is furious. He is calling an emergency meeting this afternoon." After the call ended, Emma sat frozen at her desk. Her mind replayed every moment, every kindness Alexander had shown. Had she unknowingly caused him trouble? When she arrived at the office later that day, the atmosphere was tense. Whispers followed her down the hallway. In the conference room, Alexander stood at the head of the table, his voice steady but hard. "These accusations are baseless," he said. "Emma Collins was hired because she is the best at what she does, and every financial report she has submitted is flawless. Anyone suggesting otherwise can review the records themselves." His words should have comforted her, but the coldness in his tone was new. He was protecting her, yes, but also shielding himself. When the meeting ended, he walked past her without a word, his expression unreadable. Later that evening, he appeared at her door. She opened it before he could knock twice. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "This should not have happened." "You do not owe me an apology," she said. "I am the reason they are attacking you." "No," he said firmly. "They are attacking me because I care about something they cannot understand." For a moment, the air between them held every emotion they had left unspoken. Finally, she whispered, "And what is that?" He met her gaze, his voice low. "You." The single word broke the silence like thunder. She looked at him, stunned, her heart racing. "Alex, you cannot say that," she said, though her voice trembled. "It will only make things worse." "Maybe," he said softly, "but I am tired of hiding what matters." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, as the twins stirred in the next room, he stepped back. "I will fix this," he said quietly. "I promise." And before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her standing in the doorway with the truth echoing in her chest like the distant sound of rain. The next few days unfolded like a storm without thunder. Emma avoided the office, working quietly from home while the scandal rippled through the company. News outlets ran headlines about favoritism and misuse of corporate funds, twisting every act of kindness into something scandalous. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls she did not answer. Even Clara, usually calm, sounded shaken when she left a message. "He is fighting for you, Emma, but the board is divided." Each night, Emma sat by the twins' cribs, whispering to them softly, trying to believe that everything would pass. Yet guilt gnawed at her. She had not done anything wrong, but she hated that Alexander was suffering because of her. On the fourth night, there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, he stood there, rain dripping from his coat, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "We need to talk," he said quietly. She let him in. He took a deep breath before speaking. "The board demanded my resignation. They think I compromised the company's image." Her heart dropped. "What will you do?" "What I should have done from the start," he said. "Tell them the truth." "The truth?" she whispered. "That you sent money to a stranger, that you helped a single mother because you have a heart. They will not understand." "Then they never deserved to lead," he said simply. The next morning, Alexander walked into the boardroom, cameras flashing in the hallway. The company's public relations team had insisted on a statement, but what he said stunned everyone. "Yes," he began, "I helped a woman I barely knew. She texted me by mistake, asking for help for her children. I chose to answer, not as a CEO, but as a man who still believes compassion matters. If that disqualifies me from leading, so be it." The silence that followed was long and heavy. By the end of the day, his words had spread across the internet. Instead of outrage, the reaction was overwhelmingly human. Messages poured in from people calling his decision brave, from employees saying they finally felt proud to work for him. The board had no choice but to withdraw their motion. When Emma saw the press conference replay that night, she covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. He had risked everything and somehow turned scandal into redemption. The next evening, he came to her house again, this time without his usual reserve. "It is over," he said simply. The board backed down. She stared at him, relief washing through her. "You did not have to do that for me. I did it for both of us," he said, "for what we built." He took a step closer. "I told the world the truth. The only thing I did not say is how much you and those two little boys changed me." She felt her heart stutter. "Alex, you do not have to say anything," he said. "I just needed you to know." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The twins began to stir, and Emma smiled faintly. "They always wake up when the world decides to change," she whispered. He laughed softly, the sound easing months of tension. "Then maybe that is a good sign." Later that night, after he left, she stood by the window, watching his car disappear into the quiet street. The city beyond was calm again, washed clean by another passing rain. Her phone buzzed with a message. "I meant every word. Some mistakes are meant to happen." She read it twice, smiling through her tears. Outside, the first rays of dawn began to break through the clouds, painting the horizon gold. Emma lifted her sons into her arms, their tiny hands curling around her fingers. "We are going to be okay," she whispered, and for the first time since that wrong text, she truly believed it. Sometimes, fate does not arrive with thunder or lightning. Sometimes, it begins with one wrong number and ends with a heart finally learning how to love again. In this emotional tale of fate, kindness, and redemption, a struggling single mother accidentally texts a powerful CEO and sets in motion one of the most touching millionaire stories ever told, as compassion replaces judgment and a single mistake changes two lives forever. This story explores what happens when wealth meets humanity and how love can be found in the most unexpected places. Through heartbreak, courage, and the power of second chances, the narrative delivers a cinematic journey that resonates deeply with audiences who crave meaningful millionaire stories filled with heart and hope. Blending drama with healing emotion, it captures how a wrong number becomes the right beginning, reminding viewers that true worth is not measured by money, but by empathy and resilience. For those who believe in destiny and redemption, this is one of the unforgettable millionaire stories that prove kindness can rebuild lives and turn loss into light.